Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore all things cinema. I want to welcome back to the show Mike White, who is the host of the fantastic podcast, the Projection Booth podcast. Mike, welcome back. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate it.
And we are reviewing today The Swimming Pool from 1969, La Piscine. For people who haven't seen it, I'll just read a brief synopsis. Set in a magnificent villa near a sun-drenched Saint-Tropez, lovers Jean-Paul and Marion are spending a happy, lazy summer holiday. Their only concern is to gratify their mutual passion until the day when Marion invites her former lover and his beautiful teenage daughter to spend a few days with them. From the first moment, a certain uneasiness and tension begin to develop between the four, which soon escalates in a dangerous love game. This was directed by Jacques Deray. It starred Romy Schneider, Alain Delon, Maurice Ronet, and Jane Birkin. And the screenplay was also by Jacques Deray and Jean-Claude Carrière. I hope I have this right, Carrière.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this was a first viewing for you. Is that right, Mike?
It was, yeah. Though I've had this on my to-watch list for a long time. I don't know why exactly. Probably the combination of Deray and Delon, but I'm glad that I was finally able to see it.
And what was your initial first impression?
Boy, oh boy, this movie's slow.
That's interesting. Oh, did you like slow? What did you find slow about it?
Oh, just the pace just was very, very deliberate. And I understand what they're doing. I mean, they're building tension in an incredible way, and giving you all of these, like, is it going to be this that causes a flare up? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be this? And just they keep ratcheting it up the tension the entire time. And then something happens and the movie becomes a different movie for a little while.
Yeah, I first saw it, I believe, in 2010, because there was, I don't know, you may have seen it. It's like a Alain Delon box set of various. It's like a blue cover, kind of like my backdrop here with his face. It's like a box set that you see around a lot. And my friend had it and he lent it to me, and I had just heard about Delon, and I was so struck by his features because not only is he so handsome, but he has this brooding, the dark, intense quality. And I was like, oh my God, what a face. And I had never heard of him. And then I borrowed the box set and I watched this and I found it so engaging. Yeah, that's one thing. Just from a thriller point of view, I was sort of on the edge of my seat. And I saw it again last year because I did a video review discussing some performances of Delon. And I watched it again and liked it a lot more. And then seeing it, just the other night again, I liked it again. Just my fondness for it grows and I always see something else in it. So I think it plays on a number of levels. It's just a very engaging thriller, but then what's going on between the dynamics of the characters is really, really interesting and invites the audience to sort of make their own interpretations because of the lack of dialogue in it. I mean, I think it's just so well done on so many levels. But what were some takeaways for you? Like what do you think this was about? Is it simply a thriller, or is there something more to it?
Oh, no. I mean, the whole idea of masculinity is all over this, the idea of, the coupling and all this. And, I mean, for me, to your point, it feels very, very rich. And it almost feels like this is a novel that has been, adapted. But I don't think there is a novel. I think just the screenplay is that rich that you feel that, like I was talking about, the tension building. I mean, each little piece, like you're talking about, like, here's this guy who's going to threaten their relationship, which already seems like it's kind of rocky, the way that they're, even fighting over the telephone, and just some of Delon's love play with Romy Schneider is it feels pretty aggressive a lot of times.
Mm,
So you feel like they're already on a rocky path, and then you just add this. I mean, it's like, Mr. Fire, Mrs. Gasoline coming into the party and just, okay, now we're going to ratchet everything else up. Now there's going to be, oh, he was the former lover of her, and the daughter is very attractive to Delon. So,
right.
and is she leading him on? Is what's going on with this? Is she even really related to this other guy who's just a total jackass? So, yeah, I love the way that they just keep ratcheting that up.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the film starts with just this like passionate love scene between the two of them on beside the swimming pool. And you're right, there is something almost S&M like about it, like the way she asks him to like scratch her back, and then later he's like hitting her with the branch when they're outside. And I'll hold off on why I think that was an essential element between them till particularly the what we see happen at the end. But it's what I like. So like I agree with you. It's like this exploration of masculinity, and the two males are so competitive, and it feels so universal and modern because people compete over those sort of petty things all the time, like I have a better car than you, I have a better job than you, I have more money than you. And I think the film may have also been sort of commenting on that, like consumer culture, the more I have, the better I am than you. And here we are where that's like way, 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 way worse than even it was in the 60s. But I found that dynamic to be so rich and again universal and relatable. And I love how there's a great special feature on the Criterion disc, which they have on the Criterion channel, where there's like a half an hour video with interviews with Delon and the screenwriters. And the co-screenwriters said that they intentionally wanted to have as little dialogue as possible and to make it seem like everything is, like he never says anything to Delon. Harry, who Maurice Ronet plays, everything is so passive aggressive. For example, we find out that he had been with Marianne in a previous relationship, and he just has to constantly remind Delon of that, to be like, oh, where's Marianne? Oh, she's still sleeping. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot that she likes to sleep in. Like, and then I love the way in which Delon like reacts. Like he's kind of like, why would you say something so inappropriate? And the film is just full of those kind of moments. Like even later, Marianne says, hey, can you give me a ride in your like great car to Harry? And then they just quickly cut the Delon sort of like looking pissed off. And then as the tension builds and as the film gets more and more, dangerous and dramatic, those close-ups, those cuts to those close-ups linger for longer, and they become more dramatic. And he's using that zoom lens just to zoom in and just zero in. To me, the execution of this, I mean, it could borderline be a silent film. Up until the murder, because then, with the detective, there's a lot more dialogue there later on. But just the way in which they told so much of the story with a sequence of looks and glances towards each other's and attitudes. I love that because it makes it so much more mysterious to me, particularly Delon's character. I don't know if that was if that was something you took from it.
Well, it's interesting. The way that you're describing it is very similar to what I was thinking. I was thinking of Deray as almost being like somebody holding an ant farm and occasionally shaking it up and seeing, because it is very observational, to your point with the zooms in and everything. I thought that was very, very nice. And yeah, it feels almost more like a documentary at times, where it's like, oh, wow, how is this person going to react? And now we're going to move in on them and see what they have to say. Yeah. And I mean, you should know that I'm a huge fan of Columbo. So when the movie takes its turn, it really feels like a little bit of a Columbo episode. I'm just like, oh, we just watch, rather than, because the joke on Columbo is how long before he comes in. It's like,
Right, right,
an
right.
hour and a half or something. I'm like, oh, an hour and a half, and now Columbo's here.
Yeah, yeah. I quite like the detective too. Is Paul Crochet? I hope I have that pronounced somewhat correctly. Um, he was smart because again, spoiler alert. I mean, I'm all spoilers on this show for anyone watching. I'm sure that they know that. But after Jean Paul kills Harry, it's so interesting, as we see Jean Paul drowns him, and then he gets a fresh pair of his clothes, leaves them there beside the pool, takes his clothes off to make it look like he went swimming and then drowned, and then because he was drinking. And it was so smart that the cop was like, well, wait a minute, if he was drinking and dancing so much, how is there no perspiration on the clothes? The clothes are, and it was so interesting how he just told that to Marianne. In other words, hint, hint. Now, if I tell you this, you're gonna confront Jean Paul, and then in the hope that she'll turn him in, which of course she doesn't. But one thing I thought was, and I'm no expert on what you can arrest people for or charge people with, but I thought if that cop had that on them, I would have thought, well, isn't that something you can press? Couldn't you charge couldn't you say, well, or investigate further? I mean, maybe that's just not something to hold up. I mean, I guess perhaps there is doubt in, because who could say he was dancing? I mean, no one really could know for sure. I don't know. Did you think that sort of seemed a little vague? I don't know. That was one thing about the film I thought, I don't know about that.
Well, yeah. I mean, on Columbo, he gets people arrested for just the smallest things. And I think he probably could get somebody, take him downtown for just the whole clothes thing. But usually you got to have a couple pieces of information. Right. And yeah, just trying to get Marianne to tell him where the real clothes were. Where were those other clothes? I really like the way that he's pitting her against Alain Delon. And it's, again, very Columbo-like as far as him coming in and just, I feel like he knows that there's a rift between them, and he's going to try to put that wedge in there and play her against him to get what the detective wants.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And her character is interesting because there's this passionate, at least physical relationship with Jean Paul that we see. Is very, it's very hot, it's very heated. And then once Harry comes along, you do get the impression that she still has some kind of feels for him. Like, she was actually with him for much longer, as we find out. It was like 5 to 7 years. With Jean Paul, it's been 2 years. And
almost 2.5.
Yeah, I love that distinction. And she invites them to stay, him and his daughter. And again, those quick cuts to like Jean Paul sort of like, why the hell are you inviting them to stay over here? So you get the impression that has some kind of feel for him. But then as she says to him later on in the grocery store, like, oh no, I'm really, Harry's just looking for holes in this relationship. And then as she says, no, I really love him. And you can see how Harry is sort of wounded by that. And then particularly later when he makes a pass at her, and then she's like, what the hell are you doing? So again, it's all so mysterious. Like, what exactly is she feeling and thinking? I think a lot of it is rather obvious with the way it's cut, with the way in which people are looking at one another, the various point of views. But even in the end, the fact that she doesn't turn him in, and then even though she knows that he killed him, at first she's going to leave. And then, you see that great moment where she's calling a cab, and then he hangs up the phone, and they look at each other for the longest time. And then they hug and look through the window, and the film ends there. And again, they're not telling you why she's making that choice. It's really, you have to make a judgment call off those faces, which I love when look at the faces. And again, I think a lot of it is rather obvious, not in a bad way, in a good way. But there are certain things that are more complex. So I was curious, why do you think she doesn't turn him in. I mean, what was your opinion on that?
Well, you mentioned before the whole idea of the abusive relationship, and I think it might be some of that. I mean, I found it very telling the way he puts his finger on that hang up and just silences her. And I don't think she says another
Oh,
word for
right.
the rest of the film, which is interesting the way that that plays into the remake with Tilda Swinton's character literally being silenced through so much of it.
Oh,
But
right.
which is again ironic because of her being a singer. Anyway, um, yeah, I kept thinking to myself, what's going to happen in a month or two or three with this
Right.
relationship? I mean, she has the goods on him, so is he just going to murder her at some point so that he
Right.
doesn't have to worry about it? Or is she just going to live in fear for the rest of her life because he does seem kind of abusive? So yeah, the ending really left me pretty skeezed out, which was a great, I like when an ending can affect me that much.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting, because I didn't think of it that way. I thought because of the fact that their relationship is almost sort of S&M like, I thought it's like this erotic desire they have for one
Mm,
another. I thought, in a way, I thought perhaps his violence appeals to her. A guy who was hitting her with a branch,
right.
and which clearly turns her on in the early parts of the film. And when it's that question of morals, right? I mean, I don't doubt that she really loves him. So can you turn in someone you really love, even though they did something like that? I mean, that's everybody's everybody's going to do something different. But I found it really interesting. Like, I think what you say, like there could be a fear of abuse there, but also that element of violence and eroticism mixed into that relationship. It's really rich, and it's ambiguous. But one thing that also really appeals to me is that Jean Paul, he was a writer, and he quit writing. Now he's working in an ad agency. He was apparently at a suicide attempt at one point when he was younger, and he had a trouble with alcohol. So he's like this troubled character, and then we see Harry's like this successful music producer. So, like I said earlier, it's like it's that I'm rich and you're not, and even though they're in this villa, it's his friend's villa.
Right.
His car is not as nice as Harry and stuff like that. So again, it's also, this outlook is also superficial, and what you gotta, it's almost like he kills him, but he didn't really. You feel like he didn't really mean to do it. It's sort of like it started off as just trying to take the control away from Harry. Harry's making him insecure. Harry's flirting with his wife. Harry is sort of destroying everything. And the way in which he sort of takes control back, it's like, oh yeah, you're going to dance with my wife in front of me at this party. Then I'm going to go and flirt with your daughter,
Mhm.
and I'm not. And to me, I think it's really ambiguous whether something actually happened between him and Penelope, James Birkin's character. I think to me, I felt that he was just making them think something happened.
Right. Yeah,
you
that
know,
whole sequence of them looking at each other, I love
yeah,
that. I thought
that
that
was
was
great.
really well put together.
Yeah, it was great. And even just before he kills him, like, and I thought Delon played it so well to just stay basically neutral when he's like, "Did you sleep with my daughter?" And he just doesn't react, and he's just like, "Oh, are you jealous?" Like, he does. It's this power play, even when they're swimming, they're racing one another. Like, everything is so competitive, and he even makes Marianne think that he slept with her when she asks him. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," but he never actually admits it.
Right.
So I don't even think that's whether I don't even think it matters whether he did or not. I mean, I guess in a way it does, but if he's making people think that he did, in a way that's even worse.
Yeah.
Was that your impression?
Yeah, it definitely was. And yeah, I liked the way that he was dodging those questions. And she, I mean, Penelope is just such a cipher. It's like, what is this girl? What is she thinking? How does she play into this? So I thought the way that he was playing with that really was effective that, we already don't know anything about this girl, and the way
Right.
that he can just, well, yeah, of course, just kind of, dodge those questions in a very creative way.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with her, I mean, even though often she's mainly reacting, or she's like alone at a distance, you feel bad for her. This 18-year-old like just met this guy last year who's now
Mm-hmm.
her father. It seems as if she's going along with him because she likes to be able to go to Italy and travel and stuff, which you can't blame her. But then you immediately see, I mean, at least this was my impression, that she's attracted to Delon.
Mm-hmm.
And later, it was so interesting when they're alone in the house. She switches into her bikini, right? And goes up and sees and talks to him, and that's when she starts to say, "Oh, Harry says he's better than you. He can take Marianne back." Again, is that true?
Right.
Or is she just trying to sleep with Jean Paul, or is she trying to like destroy everything with what her father wants? I mean, again, it's complicated, and it's open ended. I don't know what your opinion was of her side of things.
Oh yeah, no, she's totally being manipulative at that point. And yeah, she, like I said, so much of a cipher that I'm just like, yeah, is she trying to screw with him? Is she actually telling the truth? Is she trying to
Yeah,
be nice? Not really sure what's happening inside of her head.
right. Yeah, yeah, and I like that they portray her as being like an awkward teenager, to which I thought really worked well. And it's like the littlest details, like Marianne would say, just when she greeted her, she was like bonjour, and then it was the longest time before Penelope actually said hello back.
Right. Yeah.
And she has, I mean, she's very beautiful. She was very beautiful, Jane Birkin, but she has this awkward quality about her at the same time, and this naive. Well, I mean, she was like, I think in her early 20s when she did this. She's playing 18. I thought she had just a perfect quality for it. But even a note on casting was that the producers, I'm sure you read this, they wanted Delon in an interview on the Criterion Channel. I didn't read this, but he said they wanted Monica Vitti.
Mm-hmm.
And then Angie Dickinson was someone else, and he apparently would not do it without Romy Schneider. So I mean, he's the reason she's in it. And he said over and over again, he's like, you see, it was a big hit, and look how great she was. She was amazing in this film, and I agree with him. I thought, not only is she like, I mean, because I think part of the appeal of the character is that she's stunning. You see the way Harry is like. There's that great shot where the camera begins on her head and then moves down to her body, and then it pans up to to Penelope looking at her father like, why are you checking her out right in front of me? It's such a great, and he's even flirtatious with Penelope too. Like, I mean, he's such an obnoxious, arrogant guy. I mean, bringing people over there to throw a party when he doesn't ask anybody whether they're okay with that.
And then, he's got all of his own records that he can play at this party too. He's so arrogant that he has all these records that he's produced or is in the process of it, just so he can play those and be like, oh, look at what a big shot I am.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's that classic arrogant sort of chauvinist kind of person. But I'm glad Delon really pushed for her. I mean, I think there may apparently, because they had been lovers in the past.
Right. I heard it was.
I had read
breakup.
that she broke up with him, and then she married someone else, and then had a child. And apparently, during the filming, I don't know if this is true or not, but he was always trying to get back with her. So I don't know if that has anything to do with wanting her in the film. It's a possibility. I mean, I'm sure that he admired her talent and everything as well. But I thought that was interesting, the way in which, their real life almost reflected what we see on screen. And that chemistry is, particularly the sexual chemistry, just pops. Mm-hmm. And, Jane Birkin even said on that feature that, you can feel the sensual tension between them offset as well. So yeah, I thought all of that. I mean, what did you think just overall in terms of performances with her and
Yeah.
everybody?
Oh yeah. For some reason, she reminded me because I'm not that familiar with Romy Schneider, but she reminded me of a younger Simone Signoret. I think somewhere in the eyes.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a
Yeah.
similarity. Yeah,
But yeah, I thought she was fantastic. Yeah, Delon, just looking at him and to see that ruggedness, but the beauty
mm,
as well. And yeah,
yeah,
he's just so captivating, that guy. I just, yeah, can barely look away whenever he's on screen.
yeah.
And yeah, I thought, especially the gentleman that played Harry, I mean, to
Oh yeah,
play
Maurice Ronet.
obnoxious, yes, to
Yeah.
play obnoxious that well. I mean, you just dislike this guy so much through the movie. And I mean, that's pitch perfect for me.
Yeah. He was also in, did you ever see Purple Moon?
Yes.
Yeah, he was all, and Delon kills him in that as
Right.
well. Yeah, he's perfect in those kind of parts. And they were friends as well. And Delon said he can't even watch the film because it's so
Mm.
painful, particularly like the way, Schneider, she died tragically very young. He died not long after her of cancer. And so he says it's way too painful. But, he's like, well, what matters most is that the audiences love it, and
Mhm.
that it's a big hit. I also love just the style of the film because it's so sunny.
Oh
It's
yeah.
so gorgeous. That swimming pool as that, this metaphor for like luxury and, I mean, to me also like privilege and wealth. And then the way in which it changes, because after Harry is killed and they're looking at the pool, I love that because Jean Paul says, I'll drain it. And then Marion says, I'll never swim in it again. Right. So
Right.
it was that place of like everything centers around it, like the eroticism, the luxury, the relaxation. And then later it becomes a murder scene. Right. And
Mhm.
now no one wants to touch it. So it's that, again, it's that, that sort of lifestyle can look so appealing and you want to like be in those frames, but behind all of the riches and the beauty is something very, very dark. Was that your impression as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it felt very like Talented Mr. Ripley, those
Yeah,
kind of, and you mentioned Purple Noon as well. It just feels
yeah,
like that kind of decadent. I guess both of those are Patricia Highsmith.
yeah,
So I guess it feels very Ripley-esque as far as the wanting to be more affluent, the whole idea of putting on these airs and being at your friend's villa. It's not your villa, but yeah, and then just having this other a-hole come in and blow up your entire world. Yeah, I really like the tension that goes on in this entire film. It really, like I said, they know what they're doing as far as the pacing, even though I said it's very slow for me, but it's very deliberate. And I thought
yeah.
that I don't think that they should have or could have rushed the story.
Yeah, I agree, and I thought apparently the co-screenwriter said that the dialogue added up to 9 pages of dialogue,
Wow.
which is so little. And the amount of exposition that they were able to pack into it by just characters casually like saying, "Oh yeah, like we were together for this long," or "Oh yeah, he had a drinking problem." Like it's just like people do in life. Like these things just sort of come out. And I thought the fact that there's only that little dialogue, but yet we know so much, man, it's wonderfully done. It was a novella that hadn't been published yet,
Oh, okay.
and the book apparently is somewhat different. It's more that the person who is very wealthy is jealous of the guy who has nothing.
Mm.
So whereas here it's the opposite. He's jealous of the guy because the guy has everything. But yeah, I don't know if there's an English translation of that book, but yeah, I couldn't find anything about whether the book came out later. But yeah, on the Criterion Channel, he said they interviewed the author, and he said,
Mm.
yeah, it hadn't been published yet. So I'm not sure. Maybe if anyone knows, they can comment below and let me know. But again, just that I can't get over that sort of moment of madness that he has, and you think that just because this guy is wealthy. I mean, I could understand that it would drive you crazy that he had been with, Marianne. I mean, that's how much he also wants that same lifestyle as Harry, that he was willing to, not willing, that he has that moment of madness of killing him. I mean, that's what that consumer culture does to people. It makes you feel so small if you don't have all this stuff, which is so silly.
It would actually be a good double feature with The Swimmer, the Burt Lancaster
film,
where again we've got pools as metaphors, but him swimming across, going from one house to the next to the next to the next, and swimming all the way home from I don't know how many miles away that he does, and then meeting all of those different people. Just that whole idle rich type of thing, because all of these people have swimming pools, and it's very much like cookie cutter houses of all of these pools that he just goes from one to the next and hears all these people's troubles. But it's very that kind of almost philosophical, because this is so quiet through the whole film. And you're right, we do get just those little snatches of things, but we feel like we know these characters very well by the end of it.
Oh, completely. Yeah. And you have to, like I said, I know I'm probably maybe pushing the point a bit too much, but you have to really watch it. Because I think if you're sort of, maybe somewhat distracted, or even just kind of, you can't rely on dialogue. Like you have to, I don't think it's a hard movie to watch, but if you look away, those reactions tell like 10 pages of dialogue, so you have to really watch it. Whereas I watched A Bigger Splash. You referenced it earlier. I don't know if did you get a chance to see it?
I did, yes.
Whereas that is much more like dialogue. I got nothing against, like, I love dialogue heavy films, but in this case, it just worked so well to take this approach of making it almost silent. Whereas they took a different approach where people are much more frank with one another. They express their opinions. They're much more upfront with each other, which I think it was a good film, but to me, it just wasn't as interesting. Like the Jean-Paul character, I forget the actor's name, the Belgian, he's really good, actually. He's much more of like a decent person. And, we see that Ralph Fiennes, who plays the Harry type character, like he attacks him, right? So it becomes more out of self-defense, even though he does hold his head underwater for way too long and drowns him. He has much more remorse, it seems more accidental. Whereas with Delon, it's that power struggle, and it was that calculated nature of taking control. I mean, it almost seemed like he was possibly has more psychotic tendencies, whereas in the remake, it just felt like it just felt like more of an accident. You can understand why Tilda Swinton, like she doesn't even think to turn him in. Like, at least we didn't see. Whereas Romy Schneider is more like, Jesus, man, like why the hell would you have done that? So to me, it just felt more like a plot-driven thriller and had less of the interesting nuance of character. I don't know. What was your feeling about it?
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, Harry is just so big in this movie, just way too big for me. I mean, it feels like Ralph Fiennes is having a blast playing him, because he just dances and dialogues his way through all of this stuff, telling these long monologues about the Rolling Stones and working with them. Yeah, he's a huge personality. And it's interesting that at the end of the swimming pool, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel, and I feel very many different ways. I don't know if I really want Delon to get caught, to go to jail, because he does seem dangerous. I don't know if I want him to get away, because the Harry of that movie was an a-hole as well. I'm not really sure, but in this one, you're like, oh, I hope they get away. And then
exactly. Yeah, it's much simpler.
Oh yeah, and then when their Columbo cop stops them, the Columbo cop in this one, does what Columbo does, which is really weird because Columbo, whenever he's dealing with like a celebrity, will be like, "Oh, I'm a big fan," or "My wife is a big fan. Can I get your autograph and stuff?" And that's how this movie ends. Is they're
Yeah.
about to get out of town, and the cop stops them, and you're just like, "Well, that's it. They're sunk. Okay, they're going to go to jail, both of them."
Yeah.
No, he just wants an autograph before
Yeah.
they leave, and I'm like, why is he acting so strange now when he's met
Yeah.
her before? Yeah, it was just very out of character, and I was like, well, that was kind of a unearned twist at the end, or an unearned like little
Yeah,
prod.
that was strange. I thought maybe he didn't recognize her because when she's a rock star, she looks so different, what we see in the flashback. So I thought, I mean, maybe her musician name was like an alias, and maybe her real name is something else. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, but it almost made the cop seem almost like not very intelligent. Like he seems like a dumb cop.
Right.
Whereas in the swimming pool, La Piscine, like he's very intelligent, right? And very calculated and deliberate. And I just, to me, was the tension was much higher. And this cop just seemed like, I didn't feel he was going to get anywhere in the remake.
No. And the movie, I don't know how you felt, but I felt it was a little almost over directed at times. There are so many times where it's just, if we're going to do a trick shot, let's do a trick shot. Like even those POV shots from Ralph Fiennes, which is an odd thing that you would give Ralph Fiennes the POV because he's kind of the antagonist of this film, but they give him a POV and it's tinted blue because the
sunglasses,
the sunglasses, and then you see the husband character take the sunglasses off from the camera, and it's like, all right, yeah, this is a little much. And like like I said, if you can do a trick with the camera, let's do it. It just felt sometimes like the director was like, look how cool I am.
Yeah, it seemed pointless to me, like, pretentious. Luca Guadagnino, I believe is how you pronounce it. Yeah, I've only seen that now and Call Me by Your Name, and I wasn't a big fan of that either.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like he spoon feeds everything, like he does in A Bigger Splash. Like, I mean, I appreciate that he's interested in behavior and human relationships, but he doesn't trust audiences to like bring their own opinions to things. Like he just has characters so articulate. You can feel the screenwriting, Right. We even see that with Dakota Johnson, like Tilda Swinton sums her up perfectly at the end. Like, oh, you're doing this because of this, that, and the other. Like, it's just so on the nose. I just wasn't crazy. I just wasn't crazy about it.
I don't know why that she still gets work. I mean, Dakota Johnson's just terrible at so many things. I'm like,
I haven't seen her in much. She has a certain I thought she was good in that part because she has a certain sort of detached, dark quality about her. Mm. So I liked her in it, but I haven't seen her in very much, so I can't really form too much of an opinion. Apparently, it was supposed to be Margot Robbie, but then she had to drop out.
Definitely traded down. Sorry to pick on Dakota Johnson. I mean, I've seen the first 50 Shades of Grey movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those.
So, the real high points of her career.
Yeah, I've only seen, I forget what it was called, where she's the, I'll have to put the title up. It's also like a summer sort of retreat film. I forget what it was called. But yeah, I'm not too familiar with her work. But yeah, I thought it was just like a good, like it was an okay movie, but not nearly as good as La Piscine. And it's interesting because the director said, "Oh, it's not a remake." He said that it's more from the he liked the dynamic, like he took more of the dynamic, and he's like, "Well, I don't even really like La Piscine that much." And I'm like, but it's the story is exactly the same. I mean, he does it a different way, but I don't know how you couldn't say it's not a remake because It's so strange.
Yeah, even just like little things, I'm seeing like little nods and in a bigger splash to even just like the shots of the food and things like that. I'm like, oh yeah, this is very, very similar to how they did it in the original. Yeah, so strange.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why he'd say. Maybe sometimes you want to keep your distance from your original source material, so there isn't so many comparisons. But I thought that was an odd thing to say. I'm just checking to see if I had anything else that I wanted to mention. Was there anything else you wanted to say about La Piscine?
No, other than I appreciate you introducing this to me and making me finally sit down and watch it. I appreciate that.
So Mike, what can you tell us a little bit about, for those of people tuning in for the first time, tell us a little bit about the projection booth, what the projection booth's all about.
Sure, yeah. It's a weekly movie podcast where I go through and discuss a particular film, sometimes a few films, but usually just stick to one and then its influences, kind of put it into historical context if possible. We cover everything from the art house to the outhouse. We've got episode coming up in September with Robert on there, where we're going to be talking about Valley of the Bees.
Oh, yes.
Special commentary track for that. So line up your DVDs and get them ready to hear us talk about some bees.
It's all about bees, that film.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And then we've got Spirit of the Beehive also. Yeah. So all the bee movies, you're very Apian.
It's funny because when I was watching La Piscine, I was thinking of Spirit of the Beehive, because again, just that use of the Kuleshov technique, which movies always use, but like that film and this film just uses it so beautifully and like tells like almost like 70 or 80% of the film that way. So I was like, oh yeah, there's a connection here. And for people who want to follow you on social media, where's the best place to go?
Just go over to projectionboothpodcast.com. I've got all the links to our socials over there. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, which I refuse to call X, all those things. So
great.
Good times.
Great. Fantastic. Well, this has been another great review, Mike. It's great to have you back, and let's do it again sometime down the road.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is exclusive content that I create month in and month out. And as a subscriber, you are able to vote on polls and contribute to what I do on Patreon month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on the thanks link and you can leave a donation there if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Also click the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this episode. Also, you can also share the episode. All of these things are what produce traction to my YouTube channel. So I appreciate you watching and thank you again. And I will see you in the next episode.